it's like people don't take that well. And you become like, without asking for it, you become the enemy of the table.
Ben, how did you find Carnivore?
Look, like most of the narratives that come in, um, one faces a certain health moment or health crisis, and eventually this thing pops up. Um, I'd like to start by prefacing that I don't know, 10-ish something years ago when I was in early university. He's still a very good friend of mine. I was studying music and he was studying kinesiology. And within some months of his studies, I visited him, and all of a sudden he had read Gary Taubes, and he was telling me about how important fat is and how most of the stuff that's sold in the stores is no good. He had a phase where he was very, very strict. And anyway, he would cook for me. And of course, I enjoyed what he cooked. Um, but I thought he was completely crazy. I mean, uh, all these things that we take for granted about eating and nutrition, he was completely throwing it out the window, and I owe him now a little bit. Um, but to get to carnivore now, basically, so I had known about keto through this friend, and I myself read Gary Taubes in, I think it was 2021. And that really, once I started reading it myself, then it was really obvious. So this was one thing. Another important thing with me, during the pandemic, life slowed down. I started paying more attention to, I guess, food and its effects on me. So just like, okay, I've had eczema for years, like probably, I want to say, most of my adult life. And when I was in school, it actually, so I, again, jumping all over the place. So I'm a pianist, and I studied conducting. And when I was in school, at one point the eczema was so bad that I couldn't actually hold the baton. I had to tape my hand up. And of course, in this time I was doing really n'importe quoi. I was smoking, drinking, the whole gamut of stupidity. Um, the other thing that I discovered in the pandemic was that I am severely lactose intolerant. I would even say it's a dairy intolerant. I've experimented a bit with these lactose free cheeses and lactate. The whole it's like, don't bother. So, all right. With that in the background, I actually had for years the same condition that I believe this guy, I think his name is Carey. I had a pilonidal cyst for a very long time, and I was extremely afraid of having it removed because it's a very invasive procedure. And if you look online, there are horror stories of how the recoveries go. And at some point, you say to yourself, you cannot accept anymore your own cowardice, and I wanted to be free of it. So I went for the surgery, and that was 2022. And when I came back, I had about 3 months or so of recovery. Now, one way to recover from it is that they do wound packings, and they have to change that every day. So I had some fancy technology. I had a wound vacuum, which is basically like it's a canister. You carry it with you like a handbag or a purse, and there's a tube that connects to the wound. And I had to keep that on me for maybe a month and a half. I don't want to get into too much detail on this, but that pack and I was a bit of a love-hate relationship. Fair. So, okay, one of the times I was getting the wound changed early on, the nurse told me, it's very important that you eat everything, include carbs, they're good. And I'm like on the table, and like, no, no. But I thought, surgery. Maybe she's right. Maybe I should. So for 4 weeks into late December, I tried. I put back fruits. I put back, not that I wasn't having a ton of fruits, but it's kind of higher end oatmeal stuff. Before the surgery, I tried to get very active and I tried to cut down carbs because I knew that I was going to be a potato for 3 months. I could not do anything after the surgery. I said no. Even walking was not so fun for a while. But yes, the thing with keto, okay, I think I actually screwed it up the first um, time I really tried it. One, because I still included dairy, and that gave me the digestive issues. And I was afraid of beef. I was afraid of red meat. I still had red meat very rarely. I'd go for pork or chicken. And as I later found out, I'm quite convinced that the broccoli and the green beans were making my eczema worse. I started needing to go to the bathroom far more often, and it was, I say often, I mean, one day I counted maybe six, seven, a really ridiculous amount in the morning. And you have to understand that with the wound vacuum, um, number two is not something that you want to do, because it's there's an air seal and it's not supposed to break. And oh, geez. I mean, I had some times in the bathroom where it's like you're having a panic with this thing. Anyway, I realized immediately, I started to put on weight and I was having digestion problems. And it was just, I knew this couldn't possibly work. And I called up this friend to catch up with him and to explain him my situation. And he said in a kind of, joking around, he said, if they cut all this flesh out of your body, how come you're not eating meat? I'm like, well, fine. Um, so I think it was by mid late January, and that was also when I found your channel. Actually, I found it, I'm quite sure, early 2023, when I think your early videos were some like you just resolved, I think, some of the symptoms you had from stroke by just cutting out carbs completely. And intuitively, that made sense to me because it's like, well, it's like keto, but he's just getting rid of the stuff that kind of don't really want anyway. But I realized that I had never tried red meat in a regular way. And so I started doing this little by little, and lo and behold, I start feeling better. But it happened very gradually, and it wasn't completely linear. I had sort of dips, and I remember one night I wanted to try this vegetarian thing that I used to do years back. I wanted to see like, oh, how would this? go with me now. It was some sort of cauliflower, rice, chickpeas, not sure what else was in there, mushrooms. Anyway, I mean, I had a few bites. I thought I was going to pass out. Like I felt dizzy, and it's not like there was sugar in there. Um, no, it was such a weird feeling. And I think from that point, I started to become really consistent with eggs, beef, steak. Um, I think there was still some avocado in at that point. But in any case, one night I was making a steak, and I had intended to make some veggie with it, but for whatever reason, I was lazy. I didn't do it. I said, well, what's going to happen? I remember very well the next morning. Um, I think I woke up just without the alarm, and I realized that the moment I woke up, I was just all there. And I had to do a double take because that's not a feeling I'm used to, or at least at that time I was not used to. And I think this whole journey made me realize that I didn't know what brain fog really was until I stopped having it. And for years, the first few hours of the day were always just the worst. I mean, I would need this buffer to feel like I don't resent being awake. You know, you need coffee, this, that, just to perk up. Um, but the more I continued with this, the more it was just like, okay, the moment I'm up. I could literally work. I can get out of bed and go to work. Um, I found that really unbelievable. And other, if you want, symptoms started to show up as time went on. I guess one noticeable thing was weight loss that started to become apparent, and at some point, you know, I healed. They took out the vacuum, and I healed, and I was permitted to go back to my life, which is maybe a mixed blessing. Um, One thing I noticed for sure, so I'm a tennis player. I play tennis, um, and tennis players know that if you don't play regularly, you lose a step, you lose your level, you lose your rhythm. I hadn't played in probably 3 4 months, and I have my experience, but all to say, I was shocked when I went back to play that I played 2 hours. I didn't feel particularly tired. I didn't feel like I just came back from a surgery and was a potato for 3 months. Of course, I wasn't playing a tournament. You know, I was playing with guys that I knew that I know for some years, but I was very shocked. The the other thing too is that I did no training during these months. I did like nothing. Maybe a walk to the market or something, but I was basically a potato. And uh, yeah, I noticed. I can't like. I started to get like more muscly, and I was like, what? I'm not lifting weights. Again, it's not like I got big or anything, but something was there that was not there before.
You've continued with carnivore from the beginning of 23 till now.
Yes and no. So I've had my slips, and I'm learning the hard way. And that's why I said that going back to my life was a bit of a mixed blessing because I think I was. able to be so strict and in a way successful because I was basically a hermit. I didn't, I was teaching, but it was clear I couldn't drink. I couldn't really go out. I only went out if I really had to. So I was extremely self-reliant. And when people knew I was sort of ready to step back into social, I was like, oh, but to be fair, I kept the discipline pretty solid, I would say, until August that year. Um, and then, my own, it's ultimately one's own responsibility, one's health. But I had some personal stuff, and there was all it takes is one party, hey, one party or one gathering where you kind of just let it go. And then I will say a couple of things that, like an analogy I came up for myself. If you smoke, okay, if you smoke a lot and you stop, and then you have really like a good buffer of time where you have not smoked. You take one puff and you can feel it terrible for you, um, toxic. If you have an extended period where you don't consume any, even let's say alcohol, processed sugar, carbs, etc. Even let's say meat that would be cooked in some of these oils that are suspicious. You have a little bit of that and you feel it right away, and it's unmistakable. Um, I was shocked to the degree of yeah, how shitty you can feel fast if you relapse on these things. So I tried to get back into things into the fall, and uh, I can't quite I can't quite remember everything that happened, but I remember that I was struggling with. So I was teaching during this time. I was lucky to teach at a college last few years. And my schedule was such that I had two lectures back to back. And so at the end of the lectures, I would be kind of dehydrated and famished, no matter if I drank water or whatever. And um, yeah, it was a struggle for me to kind of figure out what to do, because in that very moment, body's asking for something, and it's not like I can go home and make a steak, or I had to get kind of creative. And I think at that time I was like, if I have some nuts, or if I rely on certain nuts for this particular day. Um, but this is not what that's not the final uh, I'd say issue that I have, or that I had. I think my challenge in being strict is that I'm a social person, and I find it hard. Let's say I had a few scenarios where, let's say I was at a dinner and I abstained from bread, vegetables, and it's like people don't take that well. And you become like, without asking for it, you become the enemy of the table. It's like, I'm not going to have this conversation now. I'm not going to convince you of what I'm doing. Yeah.
I'm almost in two minds about why this happens. It's like is it that you're standing out, so suddenly you become a target for everyone, or is it that everyone's like, you're making me feel bad about my choices? You can't do that.
I think most people are not aware. Um, I don't think they feel bad. Maybe some of them do. Um, I will say that it seems to have gone over easier when I'm with a younger crowd, and I think in the younger crowd, um, people are more accepting of, pardon my language, weird shit. You know, you could have a table of people where it's like someone's a carnivore, someone's a vegan, someone's smoking a this or that, and it's like, okay, whatever. But it's more with some of the older folks where they're more like, "Hey, what are you doing? What do you mean you're not having your veg? Huh? No, no, no. Have the potatoes. Come on." And it
I
okay.
guess, yeah, I guess, I guess with an older crowd as a carnivore, you tend to stand out more. You know, with a younger crowd, there's always someone who's going to be weirder. There's always going to be a guy with blue hair eating his toenails or something like that, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Jeez. Um jeez, yeah. I got tired of that, basically. I got tired of that. And at parties I would, yeah, I would compromise a bit. And unfortunately it is a slippery slope. It is a slippery slope. For example, a year ago I got very okay. The beginning of December, the December holidays, I kind of I it was the first December for me in many years where, probably since the pandemic, where there were so many opportunities to see people, to travel, and that's what I did. And January 1st, I felt really ashamed. I had regrets, and I said to myself, next year, you will not do this. And I was true to that promise. I mean, a little bit, but not to the extent of last year. No, 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 no. So, carnivore is what I come back to. And even if, let's say, I have a bad weekend or a week, or I put on weight, or I'm doing the fact that um, I can rely on this in a way that I have mental clarity the whole day. I don't get eczema. I can play the piano without difficulty. My digestion gets regulated. Um, just the digestion to be regulated in a way, I can't tell you the kind of like nightmares I've had over the years with digestion. And the lion version of the carnivore diet is what I go back to.
So just to clarify, so when you say go back to, that means that, for a weekend, you might kind of be going out with friends and that kind of thing, or you might be socializing in such a way that it's inevitable that you're going to kind of go off plan. But then during the week, you'll be back online or something like that.
Yes. So even if I'm with friends, like I try to be sure that we find a place that has options for me. Um, if I go to a dinner, I try to make clear, like, yeah, there are certain things that I don't eat. Um, the reason also I wanted to specify lion was that I did discover that once I got used to beef, that when I would try chicken or pork, I was quite surprised that it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing at all. And even pork, I can say depend. Pork, sometimes I get brain fog immediately, and I don't know what it is. I've read that it has to do with the diets that they're fed, and it can affect us too. On that level, I would maybe rate chicken a little bit higher, but no, beef and lamb. But that's really it.
And so on those days, like you're eating one time, two times.
Two times, two times. So it's been a few years now that I do this intermittent fasting where usually in the morning I feel sharper when I'm not eating right away. Um, Depending on the day, around 11 or noon, usually 4 to 6 eggs with ground beef, and then in the evening, a steak. That's like the perfect day, the perfect day. But that doesn't always happen. Um, so, just to give you an example, one thing I would try to I had a while. It took me a while to figure this out. That my tennis people, they play at night, and sometimes they play very late, and it's totally nonsensical to have a steak before. And so it took me some time to figure out that 2 eggs, only two, is perfect. But it took me maybe a month or two of experimenting with different solutions. Um, the other thing too, and I actually wonder if you have some input on this, that if one is very athletic late in the night, and to be fair, more and more I try to avoid this, but in the summer, for example, it happens a lot that I play at night. Even if I've had like a ton of food in the day, I come home crazy hungry. And it's like, okay, what do you do? What do you do? Do I make another storm, another feast? Do I try to go to bed? Uh, these situations are sometimes a little. Anyway, it's very.
Yeah. I personally, if I do, I'm not particularly athletic, but if it's getting late and
Yeah,
I feel hungry, I found that was, I kind of put on weight that way if I was eating very close to bedtime.
yeah.
But yeah, I have heard from other people as well that I've spoken to though that they're good. So it's really kind of case by case, I guess, whether it's good for you or not.
Hmm.
Mm. Um, so you're eating this way.
Hmm.
You things have improved for you, brain fog wise. What is the thing that really keeps you going back to this?
It's a good question. So I would say that there are really two aspects, and I mean I've hard kind of maybe beat this to death already, but the brain fog element or being clear minded. Um, and that has to do, I guess, with how I identify as being a musician. So, doing music, I think one needs to be very clear minded, and all the more so if you're working with other people. And when one performs in performance, a performance is not it's not a crapshoot of emotional adrenaline. One has to be very alert and very sensitive to things that can happen in the moment. And to bring that in a way also back to one of the benefits of this diet is that for years, and I think it's a normal thing that before a concert, you get nervous, your heart can race and so on. Even for a time I was taking beta blockers, which I think is actually horrible. Horrible. I think it's better to have a heart attack than to have beta blockers before a concert. But all to say, I had some concerts after this, after I started Carnivore, And I'm telling you, it was like we're speaking right now. I had nothing, nothing. And unlike beta blockers, I still felt the concert. I didn't have the emotionality or adrenaline taken away from me. I still felt the evening, but I was not terrorized by my body. And that's a big reason I go back to it. Another important thing is just I'm really quite serious that for many years I've had digestion issues, and it's almost like it's sometimes a joke with my friends, and not having to worry, and not even feeling that there is a shadow of a doubt that my body is giving me problems, or I'm in the middle of doing this now, I have to go take care of the fact that I'm not digesting last night's dinner well. I mean, it's a maybe we can call it a first world problem, but it really affects your quality of life, and I think people don't realize it until it's gone.
Yeah, it's a good point. Like, I still have a superstition around, like, if I've got to stand on a stage, I've still got a superstition about not eating before I stand on the stage because of the years of training I did as like training other people from a stage. I couldn't if I ate anything because I was eating the wrong things. It would just be like I'd be looking around, going, "How long can I hold this in?" You know,
Oh
or can I
shit.
trust a fart? Or
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
terrible.
yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think one year I did something where I fasted before a concert, and I mean, it wasn't bad. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, recently I had a steak, a small one, not a big one, a small one, a steak maybe a few hours before, no problem, no problem.
Right. Um, so going forward, do you think like you'll try and push more towards doing carnivore like as a 100% thing, or do you think you'll always have these breaks in there?
I want to say 100%. And it's difficult socially because it's something that can alienate you from people, and it's without intending to. And um, yeah, this could be the biggest thing because in practice it's extremely simple. But also part of my reality is that musicians need to socialize together. They need to be able to go out together, and that has to be managed somehow. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm. Um, so Ben, if people want to get in contact with you, how can they do that?
Why would anyone want to contact me? Look, I have a YouTube channel which it's more for people if they are interested in classical music. Um, I have a website. I mean, they're welcome to reach out. They want to know about carnivore diet or classical music. They are welcome.
No worries. Well, I'll link to them in the show notes. Ben, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Dave. It was wonderful to speak to you.